The void of space held many secrets, but none greater than the ship that now drifted through the Velen frontier. It moved without hurry, its massive form cutting through the darkness like a mountain. Given the power of flight, no signals came from it, no identification codes, just silence in the soft glow of engines that burned with a light no alien species had ever seen before. 300 light-years away on the bridge of the diplomatic vessel, concordant voice. Ambassador Kellis of the Vanthari Dominion studied his display screens with growing confusion. His pale blue skin reflected the glow of the tactical readouts, and his 4 eyes blinked in a pattern that showed his uncertainty. "This cannot be correct," he said to his sensor officer. "Run the scan again." The officer, a young Banthari named Tariq, worked his controls with nervous fingers. The results came back the same as before. The unknown vessel was over 12 km long. Its mass was greater than anything in Conquered records. Its power output was simply listed as undefined because the sensors could not measure something so vast. Kellis had served the galactic Conquered for 200 years. He had greeted 17 new species as they took their first steps into the wider galaxy. The process was always the same. The newcomers would be afraid and amazed. They would see the power of the Conquered fleet and understand their place in the natural order. They would bow, they would pay tribute, they would become another small piece in the great machine of galactic civilization. But this ship did not look like it belonged to a species that would bow to anyone. "Contact the Hegemony Patrol in Sector 7, Kellis ordered. "Tell them to redirect to our position and summon the rest of our escort fleet. I want every ship we have in this region here within the hour." As his orders were carried out, Kellis looked out the main viewport at the distant shape of the unknown vessel. Even from this range, he could see that it was something new, something different. The design was strange and beautiful in a way that made him uncomfortable. There were no wasted lines, no decorative elements. Every part of the ship seemed to serve a purpose, and that purpose was clearly power. 12 warships of the Vanthari fleet assembled around the concordant voice. They were fine vessels, each one capable of destroying a city from orbit. Together, they represented enough firepower to conquer a small empire. Kellis felt some comfort in their presence, but not enough. The fleet moved toward the unknown ship. On the bridge of that vessel, Captain Alina Vasquez stood with her hands clasped behind her back. She was a tall woman with dark hair that was beginning to show streaks of gray. Her uniform was simple and clean, bearing only the symbol of the Terran Coalition on her shoulder. Her face showed no expression as she watched the alien ships approach. On her own display screens, 12 vessels. Captain reported her tactical officer, Commander James Chen, light cruiser, class by Conquered standards. Energy, weapons, missile systems, standard. Shield configurations, threat assessment, minimal. Vasquez nodded. Slowly, she had known this moment would come. Every human who served aboard the TSS Prometheus had known. They had trained for years, studied every piece of intelligence that Earth's hidden observers had gathered over 3 centuries. They knew exactly who these aliens were, what they would say, and what they would try to do. Maintain silent running, Vasquez ordered. Let them come to us, let them wonder. Prometheus had been built in secret in shipyards hidden deep within the asteroid belt of Earth's solar system. It was the first of its kind, a vessel designed not for exploration or trade, but for one single purpose: to ensure that humanity would never kneel before anyone. 20 years of construction, 50 years of planning before that, and centuries of quiet preparation before even that, ever since the day humanity first intercepted alien transmissions and learned the terrible truth about the galaxy. The universe was not empty. It was full of life, full of civilizations, full of empires, and those empires were hungry. They took what they wanted from younger species. They demanded tribute and obedience. They crushed any who resisted. This was the way of the galaxy, and it had been this way for millions of years. Earth's leaders had looked at this reality and made a choice. They would not announce themselves. They would not reach out in hope of friendship. They would hide. They would watch. They would learn, and they would build. Now the Prometheus hung in space like a sleeping giant, and the ants were coming to investigate. The Vanthari fleet surrounded the human ship, their vessels looking like toys. Next to its massive hull, Ambassador Kellis opened a communication channel, and his face appeared on screens across both fleets. Unknown vessel, he said in the formal tones of conquered diplomacy, you have entered space claimed by the Galactic Conquered. Identify yourself immediately and state your purpose. Failure to respond will be considered an act of hostility. Silence answered him. Kellis waited for a full minute, his confidence beginning to crack. New species did not ignore the conquered. New species were too afraid or too curious or too eager. They always responded. They always talked. This silence was something he had never experienced before. Unknown vessel, he tried again. This is your final warning. Respond or we will be forced to take defensive action. Still nothing on the Prometheus. Vasquez allowed herself a small smile. Let them sweat, she thought. Let them feel what it is like to face something they do not understand. Let them taste the fear that every younger species had tasted. The conquered came calling. Captain, said Chen, the alien ships are powering weapons. I see it. Maintain position. Maintain silence. The Vanthari warship spread out into an attack formation. Kellis watched from his diplomatic vessel, his heart beating faster than it had in decades. He did not want to give the order to fire. Something deep in his instincts was telling him that it would be a terrible mistake, but he had his duty, and the conquered had its rules. Unidentified vessels that refused to respond were to be treated as hostile. All ships, he said slowly, prepared to fire on my command. At that moment a voice finally came from the unknown vessel. It was calm and clear, speaking in perfect Vanthari, a language that no human should have known. Ambassador Kellis of the Vanthari Dominion, said Captain Elena Vasquez. There is no need for weapons. We have not come to fight. We have come to introduce ourselves. Kellis felt a chill run through his body. How did they know his name? How did they know his language? What kind of species was this? Identify yourself, he demanded, his voice less steady than before. I am Captain Elena Vasquez of the Terran Coalition ship Prometheus. We represent the human species of the planet Earth. We have been aware of your galactic conquered for some time now, but we chose to wait before making contact. We wanted to be ready. Ready for what? Vasquez paused before answering. When she spoke again, her voice carried a weight that Kellis could feel even across the void of space, ready to meet you as equals. The ambassador looked at his tactical displays again. The human ship sat at the center of his fleet like a stone. Among leaves, his weapons were powered and ready, but now he truly understood what his sensors had been trying to tell him. This vessel was not something his fleet could threaten. This vessel was something his fleet should be afraid of. How long, Kellis asked slowly, has your species possessed faster than light travel? We developed the technology over 200 years ago. Ambassador, we have been watching the galaxy since then, learning, preparing, building what? Ships like this one. We have been building ships like this one. In that moment, Ambassador Kellis of the Venthari Dominion realized that everything was about to change. For millions of years, the galactic conquered had been the supreme power in this region of space. New species came and new species were absorbed one after another like drops of water falling into an endless ocean. But this was not a drop of water. This was something else entirely. I am contacting the hegemony High Command, Kelra said, trying to keep his voice steady. A fleet will be dispatched to assess this situation. We will wait, Vasquez replied. We have waited 300 years. We can wait a little longer. The communication ended and silence returned to the void. The human ship sat motionless among the Ivanthari fleet, a giant surrounded by children who had thought themselves powerful, and in the darkness between the stars, the galaxy held its breath. On the bridge of the Prometheus, Vasquez turned to her crew. They looked back at her with steady eyes. They were afraid, she knew. They were all afraid, but they were also ready. They had trained their entire lives for this moment. Well, she said quietly, that is the first step. Now we see how they respond. The stars looked down on the scene, cold and ancient and uncaring. They had witnessed the rise and fall of countless empires. They had seen species born and species die, and now they watched as something new entered the great game of galactic power. Humanity had arrived, and nothing would ever be the same again. First words. 2 days passed in the cold silence of the Valen frontier. The Vanthari fleet remained in position around the massive human vessel, their crews growing more nervous with each passing hour. Ambassador Kellis had not slept since the first contact. He spent his time studying every scan, every reading, every piece of data his sensors could gather about the ship called Prometheus. None of it made him feel better. The human vessel showed no signs of aggression. It simply waited, like a patient predator that knew its prey had nowhere to run. Its shields remained down. Its weapons remained silent, but Kellis could see the power that flowed through its systems, and he understood that this calm was a choice, not a weakness. On the third day, the hegemony arrived. Fleet Admiral Zorvax was a Cethion, a species known throughout the galaxy for their military strength and their pride. He was old even by Cethion standards. His scales faded to a dull gray, but his eyes still burned with the fire of a warrior. He had crushed rebellions. He had conquered worlds. He had never met an enemy he could not defeat. His fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. 40 warships, each one larger than anything in the Vanari escort. They were painted black and red, the colors of the hegemony, and their weapons were already powered and ready. Admiral Zorvax looked at the human ship on his display screen and felt something he had not felt in a very long time. He was not sure what to call it. It might have been fear, but Krethians did not admit to fear, so he called it caution instead. Open a channel to the unknown vessel, he ordered. Captain Vasquez received the transmission on the bridge of the Prometheus. She had been expecting this. The hegemony was the true military power of the galactic conquered, where the Vanthuri used words and treaties, the Scythians used force. They were the hammer that crushed any species foolish enough to resist the conquered's rule. Human vessel, Zorvax said, his voice deep and rough. I am Fleet Admiral Zorvax of the Hegemony Combined Fleet. You have entered conquered space without permission. You have refused to submit to standard protocols. You have insulted the authority of the galactic conquered. These actions have consequences. Vasquez nodded to her communications officer, and her response was broadcast across all frequencies. Admiral Zorvax, I am Captain Alelina Vasquez of the Terran Coalition. We have not insulted anyone. We have simply declined to follow protocols that require us to surrender our ship and our sovereignty. We believe there has been a misunderstanding about our intentions. There is no misunderstanding, Zorvax replied. Every species that enters conquered space must submit to inspection. Your technology must be evaluated. Your threat level must be assessed. This is the law. Whose law? The question hung in the void of space. Zorvax felt his scales tightened with anger. No one questioned the conquered's authority. No one asked where the laws came from or who had the right to enforce them. Law simply was, and species either obeyed or they were destroyed. The law of the galactic conquered, he said slowly, which has governed this region of space for 6 million years, the law that has brought peace and order to 100,000 worlds, the law that you will obey or suffer the consequences. On the bridge of the Prometheus, Vasquez exchanged a look with Commander Chen. They had studied the conquered's history. They knew exactly what kind of peace and order the Admiral was talking about. It was the peace of submission, the order of tyranny, the quiet that came when all resistance had been crushed and all hope had been destroyed. Admiral Vasquez said carefully, humanity has no desire for conflict. We have come to establish diplomatic relations with the civilizations of this galaxy. We wish to trade, to exchange knowledge, to build friendships, but we will not submit to inspection. We will not surrender our technology, and we will not bow before your conquered. Ambassador Kelly's, watching from his own vessel, closed his 4 eyes in despair. He had hoped the humans would be reasonable. He had hoped they would see the size of the hegemony fleet and understand their position. But this captain spoke as if she did not fear the 40 warships surrounding her vessel. She spoke as if she held all the power in this confrontation, and Kelly's was beginning to suspect that she did. You refuse to comply? Zorvax asked, his voice dangerous. We decline your request, Admiral. That is different from refusal. We are not your enemies. We simply choose to meet you as equals rather than as subjects. Equals. Zorvax laughed, though there was no humor in the sound. You are one ship. I command 40. Your species is unknown and alone. The conquered rules 1 million systems. You speak of equality as if it were something you could choose. Equality is earned through power, human. And you have shown me no power. Vasquez smiled slightly. Then let me show you. Something, Admiral, she nodded to Chen, who pressed a series of commands into his console. Throughout the Prometheus, systems that had been dormant came alive. The ship's true capabilities, hidden until now, revealed themselves too. Every sensor in the alien fleets, the readings on Zorvak's display changed. Dramatically, the human ship's power output climbed higher and higher, far beyond anything he had ever seen. Shield generators activated that could withstand the combined firepower of his entire fleet. Weapon systems powered up that made his own cannons look like children's toys, and deep within the vessel something else stirred. Something so powerful that his sensors simply could not measure it. What is this? Zorvax whispered. This is the Prometheus, Admiral. This is what humanity built while we were watching and waiting. This is what we became while the rest of the galaxy thought we did not exist. Kelris stared at his own readings in horror. The human ship was not just powerful, it was beyond powerful. It was a weapon on a scale that the galaxy had never seen. One single ship, and it could probably destroy everything in this sector without breaking a sweat. How is this possible? Kellis asked over the communication channel. How could a species we have never heard of build something like this? Vasquez turned to face the camera that broadcast her image to the alien vessels. Her expression was calm, almost gentle, but her words carried the weight of centuries. 300 years ago, we discovered your transmissions. We learned about the galactic conquered in its ways. We saw how you treat younger species, how you take their resources and their freedom, how you crush anyone who tries to stand against you, and we made a choice. She paused, letting the silence stretch. We chose to hide. We chose to watch and learn. We chose to build in secret deep in our own solar system where your scouts would never think to look. We studied your technology, and then we surpassed it. We analyzed your tactics, and then we developed counters for all of them. We prepared for the day when we would have to face you. Why? Zorvax demanded. Why go to such lengths? Why hide for so long? Because we knew what you would do if you found us while we were weak. We knew you would come with your fleets and your demands. You would take our world and our people. You would make us kneel like all the others, and we refused to let that happen. Zorvax looked at the human ship on his screen. He had commanded fleets for 300 years. He had seen the rise and fall of civilizations. He had believed that nothing in the galaxy could threaten the hegemony's power, but now he understood that he had been wrong. What do you want? He asked quietly. We want what we have always wanted. Admiral, peace, friendship, trade, cooperation. We want to join the galactic community as equals, not as subjects. We want to build a future where species work together instead of dominating each other. And if the conquered refuses? Vasquez's expression did not change, but something in her eyes hardened. Then we will defend ourselves. We will protect any who ask for our help, and we will show the galaxy that there is another way, a way without tyranny, a way without fear. We have not come to conquer you, Admiral. We have come to change you, whether you want to chain or not. The communication channel fell silent across two fleets. Thousands of aliens stared at the massive human ship and tried to understand what they were seeing. Some felt fear, some felt anger, and some, buried deep where they would not admit it, felt something like hope. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Zorvek sat in his command chair and thought about what he had heard. He was old. He had served the hegemony all his life. He had done terrible things in its name, things he tried not to remember. And now, for the first time, someone was telling him that it did not have to be this way. He did not know whether to believe them, but he knew one thing for certain: if he attacked the human ship, now he would lose. His entire fleet would be destroyed, and it would not even slow the humans down. All ships, he said slowly, stand down, power down. Weapons, maintain defensive positions. Only. His officers looked at him in shock, but they obeyed. The hegemony fleet pulled back slightly, their weapons going silent, the tension in the void eased by a small amount. Captain Vasquez, Zorvek said over the channel, I am transmitting a request to the High Council of the Galactic Concord. They will want to see you. They will want to hear your proposal in person. Will you come? Vasquez nodded. I will come. Admiral, I will speak to your council, and I will give them the same choice I'm giving you now: peace or war, cooperation or conflict, the old way or a new path. Humanity is ready for either, but we hope you will choose wisely. The stars continued their ancient watch as the two fleets held their positions. The first battle had been fought without a single shot being fired, and humanity had won. But the war for the galaxy's future was just beginning. The weight of silence. The journey to the conquered capital took 18 days. The Prometheus traveled through space that had been ruled by the same powers for millions of years. Along the way, Captain Vasquez saw things that broke her heart. They passed through systems where entire species lived as slaves. They saw mining worlds stripped bare by conquered corporations. They witnessed tribute fleets carrying the wealth of conquered planets to the powerful empires at the galaxy's core. And everywhere they went, the smaller species looked up at the massive human ship with eyes full of desperate hope. Vasquez had studied the history of the Galactic Concord during her years of training. She knew the facts and figures. She knew that over 8,000 species had been absorbed into the conquered structure, most of them reduced to servant races with no voice and no rights. She knew that the hegemony had destroyed over 200 civilizations that refused to submit. She knew that the current order had lasted for 6 million years, unchanged and unchangeable, but seeing it with her own eyes was different. The reports and analyses had not prepared her for the reality. The suffering was everywhere, like a wound that covered the entire galaxy. On the 15th day of the journey, she gathered her senior officers in the conference room of the Prometheus. The walls displayed images from Earth, forests and oceans and cities full of life. It helped them remember what they were fighting for. I want to share something with all of you, Vasquez said. Something from our history that I think is important now. She activated the display system and the images changed. They showed Earth as it had been 300 years ago, before the discovery of alien signals. They showed the wars and conflicts of that era, the weapons and the death and the destruction. Humanity was not always united, Vasquez continued. We spent most of our history fighting each other, nations against nations, ideologies against ideologies. We killed millions of our own kind. We nearly destroyed our own world. Her officers knew this history, but they listened in silence. The weight of the moment demanded it. When we first detected the Concord's transmissions, everything changed. we realized that we were not alone. We realized that there were powers out there that would crush us without a second thought, and we made a choice. We chose to stop fighting each other. We chose to work together. We chose to build something new. She pressed another control, and the display showed the construction of the Prometheus, giant shipyards hidden the asteroid belt, millions of workers laboring in secret, technologies developed over decades, each one surpassing what had come before. Project Colossus was born from fear. Vasquez admitted, we were afraid of what the galaxy would do to us if it found us weak, but it grew into something more. It became a symbol of what humanity could achieve when we worked together, when we stopped seeing each other as enemies and started seeing ourselves as one people. Commander Chen spoke up. Captain, do you think the Conquered can change like we did? Vasquez was quiet. For a moment, I do not know. They have been what they are for 6 million years. They have built their entire civilization on domination and control. Asking them to change is asking them to become something completely different. Then why are we trying? Asked Lieutenant Commander Sarah Okonkwo, the ship's chief engineer. Because we have to try. Because if we simply destroy them, we become no better than they are. Because the goal was never conquest. The goal was always to show them a better way. She turned to face her officers. Directly, when we reach the conquered capital, I am going to offer them a choice. They can accept humanity as equals and begin the process of reform, or they can refuse and face the consequences. But I will not fire the first shot. I will not start a war that could kill billions. We built this ship to defend ourselves, not to conquer others. The conference room was silent. Every officer understood what the captain was saying. They had the power to reshape the galaxy by force. They could probably defeat every fleet the Conquered could send against them, but that was not who they wanted to be. Hardest part of strength, Vasquez said quietly, is knowing when not to use it. 3 days later, the Prometheus arrived at the Sarah Prime, the capital world of the galactic Conquered. It was a planet of silver towers and golden spires, beautiful and cold and utterly devoted to the display of power. Ships filled the space around it, thousands of vessels from hundreds of species, all coming to pay tribute to the rulers of the galaxy. The human ship was directed to a holding position far from the planet. Conquered security forces surrounded it immediately, their weapons hot and ready, but Vasquez simply smiled and waited. She had expected nothing less. Ambassador Kelly's contacted her with an invitation. The High Council would receive the human representative. In 12 hours, she would be allowed to bring a small honor guard. She would be scanned for weapons. She would follow all standard protocols for visiting dignitaries. Vasquez agreed to everything. She chose 4 officers to accompany her, including Commander Chen. They dressed in their finest uniforms and prepared themselves for the most important diplomatic meeting in human history. The shuttle that carried them down to Thesra Prime was tiny compared to the Prometheus, but it still drew stares from every alien they passed. The design was different from anything in the galaxy. The technology was clearly superior, and the humans inside looked out at the crowds with calm, confident eyes. The council chamber was a vast, circular room at the heart of the tallest tower on the planet. Seats rose in tiers around a central platform. filled with representatives from the 47 species that made up the Concords. Ruling elite, the most powerful figures, sat at the highest levels looking down on everyone else like gods observing. Mortals, Vasquez walked to the central platform without hesitation. Her officers flanked her, their posture straight and proud. She looked up at the assembled powers of the galaxy and felt no fear. She had spent her entire life preparing for this moment. High Counselor Marath of the Vaughn Supremacy spoke first. He was ancient beyond measure, his body more machine than flesh, his voice echoing through the chamber like the tolling of a great bell. Human, he said, you have come before this council to explain your presence in conquered space. You have refused to submit to standard protocols. You have challenged our authority. You have much to answer for, High Counselor. Vasquez replied, I have come before this council to establish diplomatic relations between humanity and the civilizations of this galaxy. We do not seek conflict. We do not seek conquest. We seek only to be recognized as equals and to build peaceful connections with our neighbors. A murmur ran through the chamber. The word equals was not often heard in this room. Most species that stood on this platform were begging for mercy or pleading for better terms of surrender. Equals, said another counselor, a Sethian general named Vorith, who sat near the top of the chamber. On what basis do you claim equality with powers that have ruled this galaxy for millions of years? You are one species from one small world. We are an empire of 1,000,000 systems. Vasquez smiled. We claim equality on the basis of capability, Counselor. Our technology matches or exceeds anything the Concord possesses. Our ship, currently in orbit, could defeat any fleet you could send against it. We have spent 3 centuries preparing for this moment, and we are ready to defend ourselves against any aggression. That sounds like a threat, Vorith growled. It is a statement of fact. We do not threaten, we simply inform. We want peace. We are prepared for war. Choice of which path we follow is yours, not ours. High Counselor Marath leaned forward, his mechanical eyes glowing with cold interest. You speak boldly for someone standing alone in the heart of our power. What makes you think we will not simply destroy you where you stand and send our fleets to burn your world? Vasquez met his gaze without flinching. Because you are wise, High Counselor. Because you did not rule this galaxy for 6 million years by making foolish decisions. Because you have seen the readings from your own sensors and you know that your fleets would fail. And because somewhere deep in your ancient heart you know that the way things have always been done is not the only way things can be done. The chamber fell silent. No one had ever spoken to the High Council like this. No one had ever stood on this platform and told the rulers of the galaxy that they were wrong. We know what the Conquered has done, Vasquez continued. We know about the conquered species and the tribute fleets and the rebellions crushed without mercy. We know about the suffering that your order has caused for millions of years, and we are here to tell you that it can end. It does not have to be this way. And if we refuse your offer of change, Marath asked, then we will leave this chamber and return to our ship. We will go back to our space and build our strength further. And we will wait. We will wait for the species you have oppressed to rise up against you. We will wait for your empire to crack under the weight of its own cruelty. And when that day comes, we will be there to offer them something better. Vasquez looked around the chamber at the hundreds of faces watching her. The choice is yours. Counselors, you can be part of the change that is coming, or you can be swept away by it, but make no mistake. Change is coming. Humanity will make sure of that. The silence stretched on, heavy and thick, and in that silence, the seeds of something new were planted in the hearts of beings who had never imagined that the old order could ever end. But not everyone in the chamber was thinking about change. Some were thinking about war. And in the shadows of power, plans were already being made to destroy the humans before they could destroy everything the conquered had built. The true test was still to come. The truth revealed. Captain Vasquez returned to the Prometheus after addressing the High Council. The shuttle docked smoothly, and she walked through the familiar corridors of the ship that had become her home. Her officers followed in silence, each of them lost in their own thoughts about what had just happened. Commander Chen was the first to speak when they reached the bridge. Captain, do you think they will accept our proposal? Vasquez settled into her command chair and looked out at the stars. Some of them might. Council is not unified. There are factions who see the wisdom and change, and there are factions who would rather die than give up their power. The question is which faction will act first. She was right to be concerned. Even as the Prometheus held its position in orbit, forces were gathering against humanity in the shadows of the Sarah Prime. In a secure chamber deep beneath the Council Tower, a group of conquered military leaders met in secret. General Voreth of the Krethian forces stood at the head of the table, his scales rippling with barely contained rage. Around him sat admirals and commanders from a dozen species, all of them united by one common belief: the humans had to be destroyed. This is unacceptable. Voreth growled, one ship, one species, and they dare to stand before the Council and demand equality. They dare to threaten the order that has stood for 6 million years. Admiral Thesix of the Venther fleet nodded in agreement. He was not like Ambassador Kell, where Kellis sought peaceful solutions, believed only in force. The humans are dangerous, Thes said, more dangerous than any threat we have faced in 1,000 generations. If we allow them to leave here alive, they will spread their ideas across the galaxy. They will inspire rebellions among the tributary species. They will destroy everything we have built. Then we must not allow them to leave, said another voice. It belonged to Supreme Commander Dr. Leith of the Vaughn military forces, the highest ranking soldier in the entire Concord. He was ancient like High Counselor Mareth, his body preserved by technology that kept him alive far beyond his natural span, and his mind was filled with only one purpose: the preservation of Vorn power. We have analyzed the human ship's capabilities, DLE continued. Yes, it is powerful, more powerful than anything we have ever seen, but it is still just one ship. If we gather enough forces, if we strike with everything we have, we can overwhelm its defenses. And how many ships would that require? Voreth asked. 200 minimum, perhaps more. We would have to strip forces from across the sector. We would have to leave many systems undefended, but we could do it. Yes, we could do it. The military leaders looked at each other. What they were discussing was treason against the official policy of the Council, but they did not care. They believed they were saving the galaxy from a threat that the foolish diplomats could not understand. There is another problem, Admiral said. The human ship is currently in orbit around the Prime. If we attack here, we risk damaging the capital, we risk killing council members, we risk being seen as the aggressors. Drael smiled coldly. That is why we will not attack. Here, we have intelligence on the human home world. They call it Earth. It lies in a system they call Sol, deep in a region of space we have never explored. We will send our fleet there. We will destroy their world before they can build more ships like this one. We will end the human threat at its source, and the ship in orbit, it will rush home to defend its planet, and when it arrives, our fleet will be waiting. Without their home world, without their shipyards, the humans will be nothing. One ship cannot fight forever. Eventually it will fall. The plan was set. Over the next 12 hours, the conspirators began gathering their forces. Secret orders went out to loyal commanders across the sector. Ships were redirected from patrol routes and guard duties. The largest military operation in 1,000 years was being assembled, all of it aimed at one small blue world on the other side of the galaxy. But the conspirators had made a mistake. They had assumed that humanity was watching them with the same primitive intelligence networks that the conquered used. They had forgotten that the humans had spent 300 years preparing for this moment. On the bridge of the Prometheus, a communication arrived from Earth Command. It was encrypted with codes that no alien could break, transmitted through systems that no conquered sensor could detect. Commander Chen read the message and his face went pale. Captain, he said quietly, we have a problem. Vasquez took the data pad and read it herself. The intelligence was clear. A massive conquered fleet was gathering. Its target was Earth. The attack would be launched within 48 hours. For a long moment, Vasquez sat in silence. She had known this might happen. She had hoped it would not, but she had prepared for it anyway. How did we get this information? She asked. Our listening posts throughout the sector, Chen replied. The Conquer does not know we have them. They have been in place for over a century, gathering data on every military movement in this region of space. Vasquez nodded slowly. So they think they can surprise us. They think they can destroy our home world while we are stuck here, too far away to help. Yes, Captain, then we need to change their assumptions. She stood up and walked to the main viewport. Sarah Prime hung below them, beautiful and terrible. Somewhere down there the conspirators were celebrating their clever plan. They thought they had already won. They were wrong. Open channel to Earth Command. Vasquez ordered. Priority Alpha authorization code Vasquez 779. The channel opened instantly. On the screen appeared the face of Admiral Marcus Webb, the commander of all Terran coalition forces. He was an old man with white hair and kind eyes, but his voice carried the authority of someone who had spent his entire life preparing for war. Captain Vasquez, he said, we received your report. We know what is coming. Sir, I request permission to return to Earth immediately. If the conquered fleet arrives before we do. Webb held up his hand. That will not be necessary. Captain, the Prometheus was never meant to defend Earth alone. You know that. Vasquez felt a weight lift from her shoulder. Then Project Colossus is ready. It has been ready for 20 years. Captain, we were just waiting for the Right moment to reveal it, Webb smiled. Slightly, I think that moment has arrived. The Admiral pressed a control on his console and the display changed. It showed Earth, the beautiful blue planet that humanity called home, and around Earth, in positions that had been hidden from every sensor in the galaxy, were ships, 11 ships to be precise, each one identical to the Prometheus, each one a Titan-class warship, 12 km long, armed with weapons that could crack planets and defended by shields that could withstand anything the conquered could throw at them. 12 ships in total, including the Prometheus, humanity's true power revealed at last. My God, Chen whispered, the conquered thinks we have one ship, Vasquez said softly. They think they can overwhelm us with numbers. They are about to learn how wrong they are. She turned back to the screen where Admiral Webb waited. Sir, what are your orders? Your orders are to remain at the Sarah Prime, Captain. Maintain your position. Do not attack. Unless attacked, we want the conquered to think their plan is working. We want them to send their fleet to Earth, and when they arrive, Webb's smile grew wider. When they arrive, they will find that humanity is not the weak prey they expected. They will find that we have been ready for this moment for a very long time, and they will be given a choice. What choice, sir? The same choice you offered the Council, Captain. Peace or war, surrender or destruction. But this time there will be no doubt about which side holds the power. This time the entire galaxy will see what humanity can do. The communication ended and Vasquez turned to face her crew. They were staring at the display that still showed the 12 Titan-class ships defending Earth. Some of them were crying, others were laughing. All of them understood what they were seeing. Humanity had never been alone. The Prometheus had never been their only hope. For 20 years, Earth had been defended by the most powerful fleet galactic history, waiting in silence for the day when they would be needed. That day had come. All right, Vasquez said, her voice steady. We wait, we watch. And when the time comes, we show the galaxy what it means to face humanity united. The stars looked down on the scene, ancient and eternal. They had witnessed the rise and fall of countless empires. They had seen species born and die across the endless ages of time. And now they watched as humanity prepared to take its place among the great powers of the universe. The conquered had ruled the galaxy for 6 million years, but the age of human history was about to begin. Day the galaxy changed. The conquered attack fleet dropped out of faster than light travel at the edge of the solar system. 200 warships gathered from across the sector, armed with enough firepower to burn a dozen worlds. Supreme Commander Drith stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked at the distant blue dot that was Earth. All ships report ready, his tactical officer announced. The human home world is defenseless. No military vessels detected on long-range sensors. Dr. Leith allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The plan had worked perfectly. The Prometheus was still at the Sarah Prime, too far away to help. The humans had no other ships capable of matching conquered technology. This world and everyone on it would be ash within the hour. Begin the approach, Doctor ordered. All ships advance in attack formation. Target their major population centers first. I want this over quickly. The fleet moved forward. 200 engines burning bright against the darkness of space. They passed the outer planets without resistance. They crossed the asteroid belt without incident, and as they approached Earth, their confidence grew with every passing moment. Then the sensors detected something strange. "Commander," the tactical officer said, his voice uncertain, "I am reading power signatures near the fourth planet. Multiple signatures, very large." Drayle frowned. "Identify them." "I cannot, sir. The readings are unlike anything in our database. They are moving to intercept us." The Supreme Commander watched his display screen as the signatures resolved into shapes. Massive ships that looked exactly like the Prometheus, not one ship but 11 of them arranged in a perfect defensive formation between the conquered fleet and Earth, and behind them, emerging from hidden positions throughout the inner system, came the 12th ship, the original, the Prometheus, which had crossed the galaxy in secret. While the conquered fleet was still gathering, it had used technologies the enemy could not imagine, traveling through folds in space that the conquered had not even discovered yet. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of her ship and watched the enemy fleet on her display. 200 warships, the greatest force the conquered had assembled in 1,000 years, and it was not nearly enough. "Open a channel," she ordered. "All frequencies," her voice echoed across the void of space, reaching every ship in the conquered fleet. "Supreme Commander Gerolith, this is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Terran Coalition. You have entered human space with hostile intent. You have threatened our home world and our people. Under normal circumstances, this would be an act of war." She paused, letting the words sink in. "But these are not normal circumstances. Humanity did not build these ships to conquer others. We built them so that we would never be conquered ourselves. We built them to defend, not to destroy. And so even now, even after everything you have planned, I am offering you a choice." Dr. Leith stared at the 12 human warships on his screen. His tactical officers were screaming numbers at him, power readings and weapon outputs and shield strengths. Mathematics were simple and brutal. His fleet could not win. If the humans chose to fight, every conquered ship would be destroyed. "What choice?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Surrender," Vasquez replied. "Power down your weapons, stand down your ships, return to conquered space and tell your leaders what you have seen here today. Tell them that humanity is not their enemy, but we will defend ourselves against any who threaten us. Tell them that the old way is over. You would let us leave after we came to destroy your world." "Yes." "Why?" Vasquez was silent for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, almost gentle. "Because destruction is easy. Commander, anyone can destroy. It takes no wisdom, no courage, no strength of character. The true measure of a civilization is not its ability to kill, but its ability to choose mercy when vengeance would be so much simpler." She looked out at the stars, at the blue jewel of Earth floating in the void, at the fleet of enemies who had come to burn everything she loved. "We spent 300 years preparing for this moment. We built weapons that could shatter worlds. We created technologies that could end the conquered's existence in a single day. And then we made a choice. We chose not to use them. We chose to offer peace instead of war, cooperation instead of conquest. We chose to be better than our enemies." Dr. Leith felt something he had not felt in centuries. It might have been shame. It might have been wonder. He was not sure anymore. And if I refuse, he asked, if I order my fleet to attack anyway, then your ships will be destroyed, Vasquez said simply. Every single one of them, and not a single human will die in the process, but I hope you will not make that choice. I hope you are wise enough to see that there is another path. The conquered fleet hung motionless in space. 200 captains waited for their commanders' orders. Around them, the 12 human warships glowed with power that defied imagination. The balance of the galaxy rested on the decision of one old warrior who had spent his life fighting wars that now seemed pointless. Drea thought about everything he had done in service to the conquered, the worlds he had conquered, the species he had crushed, the millions who had died. Because of his orders, he had always believed it was necessary. He had always believed there was no other way. But now, looking at these humans who held all the power and still offered mercy, he was not so sure. All ships, he said slowly. Power down, weapons, stand down from attack positions. We are returning to conquered space. A wave of relief swept through the human fleet. On the bridge of the Prometheus, officers embraced each other and wiped tears from their eyes. They had prepared for battle. They had expected death. Instead, they had witnessed something they had never dared to hope for. A peace. The conquered fleet withdrew, their engines carrying them back toward the outer system. In the long journey home, Drelith watched Earth grow smaller on his display screen and thought about what he would tell the Council. He thought about the changes that were coming, whether the old powers wanted them or not. The humans had proven something today. They had proven that strength did not have to mean cruelty. They had proven that power could be used to protect instead of destroy. They had proven that the cycle of conquest and domination that had ruled the galaxy for 6 million years could be broken. Across the galaxy, news of the confrontation spread like fire. Tributary species heard that the mighty conquered had sent 200 warships against the human home world and had been forced to retreat without firing a single shot. They heard about the 12 Titan-class vessels that defended Earth. They heard about the human captain who had offered mercy to enemies who came to destroy her, and they began to hope on a 100 world species that had been crushed under the conquered's boots started to whisper about change. They talked about the humans and their strange ideas about equality and cooperation. They wondered if it might be possible to build something better, something that did not require suffering and submission. The galactic conquered would never be the same. The old powers could feel their control slipping away. Some of them began to plan new attacks against humanity, desperate to destroy the threat before it spread further. Others started to consider whether they humans might be right, whether there might be a better way to organize civilization. Captain Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Prometheus and watched the conquered fleet disappear into the darkness of space. Her officers stood around her, their faces showing the exhaustion and relief of soldiers who had faced death and emerged victorious. Captain, Commander Chen asked quietly, "What happens now?" Vasquez turned to look at Earth, at the beautiful blue world that had given birth to humanity. They had come so close to losing it today, but they had not lost it. They had defended it with power and protected it with mercy. Now we begin the real work, she said. We have shown the galaxy what humanity can do. Now we have to show them what we stand for. We have to build alliances with the species who want change. We have to protect those who cannot protect themselves. We have to prove that there is another way to live among the stars, and the conquered will adapt or it will fall. Change is coming, whether they want it or not. Today was just the beginning. She looked around at her crew, at the men and women who had dedicated their lives to this moment. 300 years ago, our ancestors looked up at the stars and saw a galaxy full of predators. They could have given up hope. They could have accepted that humanity would eventually be discovered and destroyed like so many species before us. Instead, they chose to fight. They chose to build. They chose to believe that we could become something more than just another victim. Her voice grew stronger, filled with pride and determination. They were right. We are something more. We are humanity, and today we showed the galaxy what that means. The 12 Titan-class warships held their positions around Earth, guardians of a world that had become the hope of the galaxy. In the darkness of space, thousands of stars burned with ancient light. Among those stars, countless species looked toward the solar system and wondered about the strange beings who had appeared from nowhere and challenged everything they thought they knew. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. On the bridge of the Prometheus, Captain Alina Vasquez allowed herself a small smile. The war for the future had only begun. There would be more battles ahead, more challenges to overcome, more choices to make between destruction and mercy. But she was not afraid. She had her ship. She had her crew. She had all of humanity standing behind her. And most importantly, she had hope. The stars looked down on the scene, cold and ancient and patient. They had witnessed the rise and fall of empires across millions of years. They had seen species reach for greatness and fall into darkness, and now they watched as a new chapter began in the endless story of the cosmos. It was the chapter called humanity, and it was only just getting started.